Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Evan Decker, and joining me, my host companion, Sejan Sarowick. Good morning, Sejan. How are you this fine Mother's Day taping?
We watched a heck of a movie for Mother's Day, I'll tell you that. No, it's I am doing quite well though.
I just want a little behind the scenes for everybody. This morning at 10:12 a.m. Eastern time, so I guess 8:12 Sejan time, I received a message from him that just said, "Well, congrats, brother. You have found one hell of a movie for us to talk about." And I was nervous that we may have watched different movies, because I have realized that could literally describe any of the films that we have picked for this Brendan Fraser History Month 2026. You had me scared, Sejan. You had me scared.
No, man. Can we take a quick moment for the apparent side character hero of this epic this year of
Lauren Dean?
What's his nuts? Lauren Dean. Yeah. I look, man, I had no idea. What did you?
No idea. You need to understand them. Like, I know this guy. He looks so familiar. And then as I'm watching the credits, I'm like, fuck, it was Lauren Dean. What are the chances? What are the chances
Weird.
that Jude from Darkly Noon would play Steve DeCunzo in Mrs. Winterbourne? Because that's what we're talking about today. We're celebrating the 30th anniversary of the film Mrs. Winterbourne. I have to do something before we go further, and that's, and here's to you, Mrs. Winterbourne. Now the title of the episode makes sense, Sejan.
There we go.
Now we can do whatever we want. And actually, first of all, I love Brendan Fraser History Month. I just got to start with that. I cannot wait for it to be June, because already in 10 days, so much has happened that I want to talk about. But we're focusing this month. We're focusing on Brendan Fraser, which is why I'd like to do something a little bit fun, and that's look at the film Airheads, just brief, because in 1994, we saw The Lone Rangers, comprised of Brendan Fraser, Adam Sandler, and Steve Buscemi. And 2 years later, Adam Sandler is Happy fucking Gilmore. Steve Buscemi is Fargo. He's the guy in Fargo. I do not know his character's name in Fargo.
The funny-looking fella.
Yeah, the guy who gets thrown into a wood chipper. Spoilers for Fargo.
Oh, don't you know?
And then Brendan Fraser is fucking Land Bill. He's in this, and he's in other movies too, which we're gonna look at next week. But yeah, Lauren Dean showing up was a hell of a fucking thing. You know who else surprised me?
Well, here's the thing, though. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's any moment that they were on set together, because the only time that those two characters have any moment where they're in the same room, by that point, I mean, spoiler alert, but there's a dead body. And
how the movie opens, though. Let's be fair. It does open with a dead body.
That's true.
Everybody's all pissy.
So we get back to the dead body. Yeah.
Everybody's all pissy about, I'm tired of modern storytelling where they show us the most interesting part and then they jump back to tell us how we got there. They did it in 1996 with Mrs. Winterbourne. That's kind of what film noir is all about. So people who have that as a critique, it's
I actually think what it is actually more than anything is I think that it is a real influence of anime specifically, but a lot of Japanese television. They very famously, anime will always start off with like a mid-story, like one shot, and then episode 2 you go back, right? Like I think about like the first episode of Full Metal Alchemist and things like that. Like that's just, but that part of that is because they like. There's, at least from my understanding, I want to make that clear, that it's not me being an expert on anime in any fucking way, but from my understanding, like it's much like in an RPG where they want you to have all the powers at first and then they strip them away. They want you to know like what we are taught, like what we are capable of, what we are aiming for, and then like seeing the person lose that does have a dramatic effect and stuff. It's an interesting kind of crossover, I think, that's come from that genre specifically, because a lot of creators these days grew up watching anime, you know?
I mean, you say that, but then I think about something like Sunset Boulevard, which starts with Raymond Chandler dead in the pool. I don't think it's Raymond Chandler,
sure.
but
no.
I mean, like, it's existed in Hollywood, but I see where you're coming from with modern storytelling. I just want to make sure that we're not anime.
No, but I think that the rise of it over the last few years, of people saying they're like sick of it, like, I think it became a trend because I think that there were a lot of people raised on a very specific type of media. I don't think that they were watching Sunset Boulevard, all of them. Sure, some of them, you know, but not all of them.
True. It's fair. It's a fair point. But yeah, so I guess the other thing that I want to touch on before we go too much deeper is Tony Robbins. And the immediate joke from my mother is like, are we watching Shallow fucking Hal? Like, I liked that. I like that Tony Robbins is in this family as the guy in Shallow Hal.
Yeah, nice. I do think that it's a little bit of a fucking dig at him for this to be like the thing that dude died watching is a pretty, like, it speaks to his character. Yes,
it does. Oh, God.
I don't know. Is Tony Robbins the original, like, manosphere, like, influencer?
I don't believe he was manosphere until, like, even at the point where, like, Shallow Hal, where, like, that would definitely be where it looks like he, like, graduated or evolved into being that. He was mostly just talking about the power of positive thinking. It's so strange. I mean, like, that's a heck of a thing to try to parse out who started it. But if I were looking at Tony Robbins, because even in Shallow Hal, he's supposed to be like this caring guy and who's trying to do a nice thing for Hal. There's no accounting for his audience, though, so there's a good chance that they have always been the type of people who are looking for that type of validation, is the word I'm going to use there.
When I was a kid, I honestly thought that he was a cult leader. Like, I thought that was just one of the things. Like, I thought, oh, that's a cult. Like, you know, I grew up with, like, hearing stories in the background about, like, Waco and shit, you know? Like, as far as I knew, like, a person like this speaking like this to a group of people like that and trying to sell something the whole time sounded pretty culty to me. So I honestly just assumed he was just a cult leader for the longest time, until I started, like, picking up that he was in things. And I was like, oh, I mean, is this like a Scientology thing? Are we all just cool with this cult? And then I looked into it and I was like, oh, it's not really a cult. It's just, it's a pyramid scheme. But like, yeah, no, I don't know. I got some real feelings about Tony Robbins, but they started with the fact that I completely misunderstood that he was not just like some religious nut job when I was a kid.
I mean, for me, it was the fact that Tony Robbins was in Shallow Hal. That was my first real exposure to him. And then we are not talking about this movie, and all I want to do is talk about this movie, but I feel like we do have to address the Tony Robbins in the room. And I didn't realize that he wasn't just a character, like, until the end of the movie, when it's Tony Robbins as himself, and I'm like, oh, that's like a guy? And my father, working in sales in the 90s, meant that he was exposed to all sorts of, like, self-help, cults, really, self-help gurus that were basically cult leaders, but money was what they were worshiping. So my whole life...
So cult leaders.
Yeah, so cult leaders, right?
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, we could just as easily call them religious leaders. I don't know if we should maybe alienate Peoria 2 weeks in a row, But yeah, I guess we just kind of did. But so he, like, at work, he would be given books to read. Things like Who Moved My Cheese or Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, which, like,
How to Make Friends and
he never had to read the Dale Carnegie How to Win Friends and Influence People.
But like those kinds of books like became really. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like we talk about not MLM, MLMs these days with with like women getting like doTERRA products and even going back as far as Avon and stuff, and about the idea that is, I mean, they are pyramid schemes. You buy $20,000 worth of product from the person above you, hoping you can sell it for $60,000. But like then like the person above them bought it for this much and so hoping for that much, and it just built its way up like a fucking pyramid. But we don't seem to call it that. I don't know why, but it feels very much like the kind of cultural like world that MLMs live in these days is the space that 90s sales
oh yeah, without a doubt.
What's the motivational speakers but
also
like that feels like that's what that was in the 90s.
There is also the fact that like it's a sales scheme as well. Like Mary Kay starting in they were early in the night, they were like the 80s, but Tupperware parties and all of those things. Yep. Like it is a very 90s centric thing. And the grossest thing about, as we're discussing the marketing behind it, the marketing behind this cult of sales, is the fact that they just rebranded, right? Multi-level marketing is just pyramids. But you can't call it a pyramid scheme because that has negative connotations. So we call it multi-level marketing, and nobody seems to understand that if you were shown a picture of both, Pam Beesly would say, is the same picture.
Yeah.
Because it is.
Right. In the Venn diagram, it's a perfect circle, right?
Yeah. Wow. So this is not what Mrs. Winterbourne is about at all. I'm just gonna be completely honest.
No, but there is but here's the thing. This is the environment that this movie is made in. And so this is a movie about a woman struggling who finds another woman who very quickly swoops in to care for her and like unabashedly cares for her the entire film. And then like add to that, there is a man in this that we are very much led to believe is misguided in the beginning of this movie, that by the end of this movie is a different person. I commend the amount of not feminism, but like female focus that this movie has. Because I don't think this movie has a huge agenda in that way. Maybe it does. Maybe I'm just falling for it. And in that case, bravo to them, because there's worse things I could fall for. But like there is a huge female focus in this movie, and at a time where, as we're talking about, wasn't always the case. And like I think that by opening this movie with that shot of Tony Robbins and this guy in this skeezy motel dead in the bed, like, is making a pretty strong statement about men as well, right? And like, this is not me deriding it. This is not me being like, look at the way they've made men evil again. Like, no, yeah, let's talk about the ways in which this like domestic abuse shit like affects people and what it means to be in a different class of person when it happens, you know?
Yeah, I mean, those are heavy words that you just used. Correct words.
All of that is to say, this movie is fucking insane.
Yes.
Right? I have a diatribe about kind of this movie, but I want to make sure you got out what you wanted to say.
So, I mean, I guess what I do want to say in terms of the whole feminism of it all, right? The female forward. So, I mean, this is technically a remake of a Barbara Stanwyck film that adapted the same movie, the same novel, I Married a Dead Man by Cornel Woolrich, written under the pseudonym of William Irish. Things that are important to know, called No Man of Her Own. Just like, so that's like, and that's the thing. It's the whole sort of thing is that, a pregnant woman adopts the identity of a railroad crash victim, starts a new life with the woman's wealthy in-laws, but is soon blackmailed by her devious ex. That's the same sort of thing. So then this film that we watched today, Mrs. Winterbourne, the fact that so much of it felt like a film noir talks to the fact that like, that's because it already was a film noir freaking 46 years earlier. This movie is wacky wild.
This movie...
Yeah, go.
Does this movie... Do they want us to know that? Do they expect their audience to be picking up on that joke? Like, it's not like a satire, right? Or is it? Like, because for me, to be satirical, you have to be taking aim at something pretty powerful. You have to punch up, right? Like, the idea... Like, it's a weird kind of swing to like make like a goofier version of this film noir movie that, to my knowledge, is not top of the list for many people. Like, I'm sure that it's a fine movie, but I've never heard of it, and I watch a fuck ton of black and white films in my life. Like, I mean,
I honestly can't believe that it's something that I had never heard of before. It's one of those situations where, like, I've watched a lot of Barbara Stanwyck films, right? It has a 7.4 on IMDb, No Man of Her Own. And honestly, looking at straight up just the cast, right? Straight up just the cast, all of it is almost references to it. Like, it is Hugh and it is Bill Harkness who are there. It is a Patrice Harkness, not Patricia. Helen Ferguson is Barbara Stanwyck's character, and Connie Doyle, Ricky Lake's character, her middle name at the wedding is revealed to be Helen. They very much would love it if you came into this film with the knowledge of No Man of Her Own and were able to pick up on these. They're Easter eggs, right? At the basis form, all of these little references to No Man of Her Own are Easter eggs for people who are familiar with it. And honestly,
but
the Wild West that was film in the 90s, that was the type of shit that they would do. It wasn't one of those things where, like, everybody needs to get this reference, right? How many people our age do you think saw Father of the Bride and realized that it was a remake? Like, that's a real question.
See, now you've hit on something, because, as I said before, I was raised in a house where, like, we watched the original and then we watched the new one a lot of the times with my family. You know, my dad and my grandfather especially. If they had my grandfather always had a copy of the original, we would do that first. But no, I get your point. I don't think many people cared that there was an original version, right? And I don't think many people would, and that's what I'm getting at here, right? I feel like you can watch Father of the Bride and not have any knowledge about the fact that it's a remake and still really kind of enjoy that movie. The way that it's made is much like what you're saying, is that, yeah, there's some Easter eggs to the old one. You know, there's some stuff that you can bring back and forth that's fun to talk about. But at the end of the day, you don't need the first movie to understand the second, right?
Right.
I almost feel like this movie feels now that we're talking about the fact that it's a remake, right? If there's supposed to be some kind of funny edge to, like, look at this old noir story, we're just making a funny version of it, that's great, but, like, I don't have any connection to the original, like, so that, like, I don't care, right? So this movie kind of doesn't do enough of its own its own thing, right? And it's a shame.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the last thing I do want to say before we move past this, and into your diatribe, I've gotten out a good amount of what I had to say on this, but the other thing that I want to say is that the lawyer who's working on her will, there's that beautiful scene where Mrs. Winterbourne, Shirley MacLaine, Mrs. Winterbourne, Grace, is updating her will, and it's Ty Winthrop, and that's the exact name of the lawyer from the Barbara Stanwyck one. That's the last thing I'm going to say. So I don't think that on any level they would say, or they would imply, that it was meant to be required viewing, but I think it's one of those things where, like, if you look into it, it's God, I can point out Sleepless in Seattle is another one like that. When I first saw that movie, even in the fucking movie, they referenced the fact that An Affair to Remember is what the finale of Sleepless in Seattle is going to be. Like, there's a whole fucking scene where Tom Hanks and the dad from Alias, whose name I can't remember right now, and it's killing me, are, like, joking about how women love An Affair to Remember. Oh, it ends at the top of the Empire State Building. And, like, having seen An Affair to Remember 20 years after seeing Sleepless in Seattle for the first time, I now understand all of the meta stuff there. But I don't think it's an interesting shift in terms of how we consume media, that Nowadays, we expect people to know everything. We want people to know everything. They would have so blatantly, like that Barbara Stanwyck movie probably would have been the thing on the TV when we discover Steve's dead body in the beginning, right? We want everybody to know what we're doing. But in the 90s, like, people were content to do that shit just for themselves. And honestly, I kind of miss that. I just, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, but I just think this movie, I wonder if this movie would have fared better if it had been more on the nose, you know?
I mean, possibly. Who knows? I don't know. I mean, it's got a 6.3 on IMDb, which is not great, but I mean, like one of the reviews on IMDb from Mrs. Winterbourne says that it's a Brendan Fraser sleeper. I mean, there's a reason it took us 10 months celebrating Brendan Fraser to get to Mrs. Winterbourne. And yes, I will also admit that part of it is the fact I wanted to wait till its 30th anniversary. That one's on me. I'll admit that.
Yeah. But no, but there is, so like, I think that in terms of, before we dive into the full plot of this movie, I guess, like, as far as like the meta stuff around it and what I like really kind of, what this movie kept making me think of is this is 1996, right? And that's 2 years post Clerks. We are in a post Clerks world, and not to, beat a dead horse, but like the ways in which indie film really kind of got its shot in the arm with Clerks. I won't say that it was created by Clerks by any stretch, but like not independent cinema, but indie film, right? That thing that we always talk about how there's become this like genre where suddenly they're pumping $18 million into a movie and you're like, that's not so indie anymore, right? But it is. There's a difference between independent cinema and indie films, right? And I think that Clerks really kind of was for that concept, like Michael Jordan was for the NBA, right? Like it took it from this sport to like this phenomenon, right? Clerks took the idea of independent film from like this thing that like artists did on the side to suddenly being something that like, hey, maybe we can market this, or maybe it doesn't have to be so independent. And that's when we get things like Fox Searchlight and stuff coming through and creating this whole other network of film, right? And I feel like Mrs. Winterbourne is a few things. It's a script that's probably been around for a bit, especially since it's a remake, right? So like this idea of, oh, why don't we redo this noir movie, but do it with a little bit of a funny like spin to it, which is like very 90s, right? Like let's take this story and just and make it very light and fun, because it was the 90s and we didn't give a shit about anything. We weren't trying to say anything in our movies, which isn't true. We were always trying to say shit in our movies, but like there was this idea that like we were kind of just putting it out there, putting our feelers out there to see if anybody agreed with us. And if they didn't, that's okay. We would just stop and go away. But, more often than not, we would find a group of people that did like what we were saying, and then we became good artists. Like that was the hope, right? Yeah. But like, I don't know what Mrs. Winterbourne, right? Because watching this and thinking, okay, this was the script that was around, and then basically the like the indie film kind of blow up of the 90s allowed for this movie to finally get made, right? And I adore it for that, but I also think that it doesn't really have much more to offer than that, right? Because you watch this movie and there's just wild shit happens. It just kind of just happens and people go with it. And then like the conflict is never where you expect it to be in this movie. It's really weird. And like I think that as actors, you definitely jump on a project like this. You don't get to make movies like this very often. You read this script and it reads like a weird script, but it also doesn't read as impossible, right? I just think in action, the execution just doesn't get there.
That's such an interesting thing to hear. First of all, if we are going to talk about the rise of indie cinema, and we're not going to touch on the Weinsteins and their unfortunate connection to that being a part of it, you also need to look at 92 with Reservoir Dogs.
That's not us ignoring it, by the way. We talk about it all the time. We're going to focus on this right now.
We're focusing right now. I just feel like it would be a little insincere not to mention Reservoir Dogs as the thing that like also kicked stuff off in 92.
Yeah. No,
and the reason why
I was thinking in the comedy realm.
No. But I understand that, right? And rom-coms are also taking off in the 90s with things like Sleepless in Seattle. I mean, clearly that's not the first. When Harry Met Sally is kind of the rom-com that launched 1,000 rom-coms. 1,000 situationships if I were clever the first time and I didn't need to take 2.
I mean, the remake though, the remake buzz of the 90s. I mean, we had The Odd Couple came out then, right? And stuff like that. Didn't we have like
there was definitely definitely a part of that as well.
Dennis the Menace and stuff.
God, fucking Dennis. I mean, the Flintstones, right? We've talked about it on this show. The Flintstones becoming a movie in 1994. Like, it was the field was rich for it. And the thing is, one of the other reasons that I wanted to bring up Reservoir Dogs is because it puts us in 1992, which, God, we're so far from the movie. Like, I can barely see it. I don't know. I'm just being honest.
No.
Okay. But it is, 92 was the first recession that happened in our lifetimes, Siegen. Like, it is an undeniable fact that in 1992, we went through our first economic recession. So the fact that Hollywood, which we have as adults, as fully cognitive individuals who are not only interested in the realm of entertainment, but also kind of dipping our fingers into it when things happen, like the writer's strike in 2007, and then the more recent writer's strike. What you see in the wake of those, which we can now say we're seeing in the wake of the 1992 recession, is Hollywood, quote unquote, playing it safe. So, like, indie films become this weird path to doing something new, bold, and challenging. But everything else, if we can take an established product and just bring people back with it, basically the sins that we're seeing in cinema right now, a lot of them go back to 92. I mean, a lot of them go back to come on, Son of Kong coming out exactly 9 months after King Kong released in the 30s.
Sure. Yeah. Right? Let it never be said that people were like, oh, an original, old Hollywood used to have all sorts of new ideas. It's like, all right, calm down.
No, it didn't. But what Hollywood
We also went to 4 different Planet of the Apes movies in 5 years, so I think we're okay.
Which, the third Planet of the Apes, which is what, Beyond?
Beneath? Isn't that one Beneath?
No, Beneath is the second one. Journey 2 is the one where the apes go back in time and they're in California.
Return.
Is it Return to the Planet? I don't know.
To the Planet of the Apes?
I like the third one. The third Planet of the Apes. I love the first Planet of the Apes, but then of all the sequels, I'm going to look it up because I don't want to sound like a total idiot. That's right. Devin Decker typing in Planet of the Apes.
I like Planet of the Apes, the Moscow connection.
You're such a jerk. I love you. You mean Mission Moscow? Battle for... Oh, God. Can I just search for Planet of the Apes? I just want to see all of them. Nope. Yep. Thank you, Project Hail Mary. Planet of the Apes 3. I bet if I type that in, that'll tell me what I want to know. Nope. So unhelpful. Just so unhelpful. Escape from the Planet of the Apes.
Escape
from the Planet of the Apes, because they leave the Planet of the Apes and then they go through the same time dilation that has Charlton Heston wind up on Earth in the future. They go back in time and Roddy McDowell's character and his wife wind up in modern day. I love that one. I absolutely love that one.
Planet of the Apes is a weird series that in my lifetime has always existed in my house. My parents, when I was growing up, had a VHS collection set of all of the old Planet of the Apes movies, and it sat on our shelf. And not like collecting dust. We would watch them from time to time for sure. We watched them honestly. There was a point in my life where I was just having them on all the time, just because they were the only cool thing to watch in the house, quote unquote. But that was just because they were like adult stuff and I was watching like Rugrats otherwise. But anyway, so that kind of evolved for me to now I personally own a DVD collection of them. And like, I don't watch them for more than like 20 minutes at a time these days, but I will throw a random one on while I'm like cleaning or something. Right. And like, I don't know why it only is just occurring to me. Like, I don't have some unabashed love for the Planet of the Apes movies. I don't know much more about them than probably what's available in your basic film like theory books and shit like that. Like I don't I don't know why, but Planet of the Apes has just always been in my life.
I mean, it's one of those ones that it certainly had it was sort of Star Wars before Star Wars, Come for me, Star Wars fans, because Planet of the Apes
Come for me,
was like
Star Trek fans.
yeah. There's that too, but I feel like Planet of the Apes was the big like deal until the re-release of the Star Wars trilogy, because yes, people clearly had seen Star Wars. It was something that was discussed. It launched the career of George Lucas and his trajectory into Steven Spielberg and all of that. Undeniable facts. But the re-release of the trilogy is why The Mandalorian and Grogu is a film that is going to be releasing later this month.
Right.
If those re-releases had not happened, because we talk about it a lot on this show, that films used to get re-released all the time. But it wasn't until the like trilogy re-release of Star Wars that like they tried to sell it to us like it was a big deal. Like it was something that like never before, like I'm sure this has been done before, guys. I mean, it may have been the first time. God, we are just Mrs. Winterbourne. I did not think that you would have so much underneath your pettiskirts for us to like look at in terms of just what cinema was in the 90s. But it is certainly one of those times where like it's re-edited to feature new scenes and things that were missing, right? Like that has to have been launched by the re-release of the Star Wars trilogy. I can't think of anything that happened before that where like the director's cut was a real thing that we discussed. Am I wrong there? Can you correct that?
I mean, there's definitely director's cuts before that we talk about. Apocalypse Now being like one of my favorite examples, and like that sort of stuff. Or but honestly, my number one example of that is Mr. Arcaden from Citizen Kane. There, Orson Welles. There's famously like 4 cuts of that movie, and one of them being the like you hear those stories about the director having like a vault with all of their movies in it and people find them and all that shit. He literally had like a safe with this particular like confidential informant, I think is what it ends up becoming called. I gotta look into that, but I don't quote me on that second part, but it gets like cut to hell to the point where he ends up coming out looking like I think it's in the studio version, he ends up coming out looking like a good guy. And that's not the point at all. He is supposed to be the villain of the story. So when you watch his version, which is like an hour longer, you get all of this other stuff about this guy that just makes him awful. It's really wild. It's crazy. But like we have always had the idea that there's a true vision out there that the artist wanted us to see. But, we love a good story about the underdog, and this idea of the big bad studio coming in and crushing art. Like, I'm not going to say that we enjoy it, like it makes us happy, but like, yeah, of course, as humans, we always want to expect, it gives us an excuse why that movie wasn't as good as we wanted it to be, but that's because the studio interfered, right? Like, and it's not that it's a made up excuse. Like a lot of the times, yeah, that is exactly the reason. It's just that it gives us something to kind of fall back on when things don't live up to our expectations.
Very true. I guess, so the thing that I want to start in before we go deeper into this film is why you think Mrs. Winterbourne would be a indie or independent film. That is my first question.
Yeah. So we've already kind of talked about it. The fact that it is this kind of nod to this noir film, but very specifically a funny version of it, a comedic version of that story. And then with that, the idea that like has a comedy. This starts out with domestic abuse. This starts out with a train crash that kills 2 people that we've just met. This starts out with, it kills a pregnant woman.
Yeah, we know where one of Clay's baby coffins was for. It was for the unborn child of Hugh and Patricia Winterbourne.
Yeah, like this movie takes some hard fucking swings. Also, we have this delightful gay character in Paco that is like front and center talking about relationship issues and things like that. There's so much for a movie that comes out in 1996. There is so much here where they are trying to push some boundaries. Not a lot. I'm not going to sit here and act like this movie is some like bastion of like, oh yeah, this is like really trying to stick it to the man. But like, this is a movie that, as I said before, this movie doesn't get made unless there is the excuse of, well, everybody's making indies now. So let's throw $24 million at this script that has been here, get a good cast in it and see what happens. Because for other studios, that has actually netted them a lot of money. So like, why not? But this movie is just, I mean, wild. As you mentioned, it opens up on a dead body. Like a guy shot in a seedy hotel with Tony Robbins playing on the TV, and this is a romantic comedy.
Yeah, it's you're not wrong. It's a good thing. I guess the reason why I question the whole that of it is the director is Richard Benjamin, which I was well aware of before I watched this film, and he has quite the pedigree in Hollywood. One of the reasons that Ricky Lake is in this film is because he directed Mermaids. One of the other things is he directed Milk Money, which is one of my favorite films, and I cannot wait until the 40th anniversary to just do a full-on Milk Money episode. But we watched Milk Money about a month ago because I knew that we were going to be watching Mrs. Winterbourne, and I knew that it was the film that he directed immediately prior to Mrs. Winterbourne. And even like once I introduced that bit of information to the family, everybody was like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense, because they feel very similar, like with the director. But then the other part that I want to look at is one of the writers. And this is where I definitely buy into the indie of it all. I mean, it's a screenplay by two people. The first is Lisa Maria Rodano, and she has not written anything else based on her IMDb. She has one writing credit, which is the screenplay for Mrs. Winterbourne, and she played Jimmy's wife in a 1990 episode of The Tracy Ullman Show. That is the illustrious career of Lisa Maria Rodano. But the other screenwriter on this is Fief Sutton. And that name, if people don't know it, he was working on Cheers. I'm taking a moment here. I'm getting up on a soapbox. And that is to say, Mrs. Winterbourne has been done dirty by history. Dear God, do I hope that us celebrating Brendan Fraser History Month by looking at Mrs. Winterbourne sparks some sort of resurgence of this film. I understand that you think maybe it's not like the best thing or things like that, but come on, 6 trivia things for Mrs. Winterbourne on IMDb, and none of them are the fact that Connie says can we go to that bar Cheers? And like the screenwriter of this film wrote 23 episodes of Cheers. That'd be written 7 different times if this were Batman Begins. like everybody would think, oh, I'm the first person to find that out. But like, so there's definitely a pedigree there. So that's why I question the whole independent of it all. But knowing that Lisa Maria Rodano was the writer of this, there's a real good chance that it was a script that she wrote, and then Fief Sutton came in to do Punch Up, and then they gave it to a very capable director who was known for doing films that were very female forward. Things like Mermaids, things like Milk Money, things where the stories are all about women and the agency that they actually have in our modern world.
Yeah.
So I'm not against the whole discussion of this as an indie film, because I can definitely see how that is. Is
your only issue the pedigree of the artists behind it?
No.
What is the next Wes Anderson movie going to be? An indie film, probably.
Well, probably, but like that's
a big budget movie.
No, so I mean, because it is the Wild West of indie films, this legitimately feels like, at the time, they were trying to Trojan horse this independent film in front of people. And legitimately, I think that is one of the bigger reasons why Mrs. Winterbourne has $10 million in domestic income in its release in 1996.
Yes.
That's what it feels like, is because there's a real disingenuousness to how this film is sold. I mean, Ricky Lake, Shirley MacLaine, Brendan Fraser, Those are three people who are known in 1996. They're all, they're names that you know. They're names that you see they're going to be in a movie. Oh, I'm interested in that. I might check that out. Like, it's not like indie films now, right? Where there's only one person whose name is like that. And honestly, they're in one scene. Like, I called him Land Bill, but like, let's start with.
Oh man, I think about movies like Little Miss Sunshine, where you have Steve Carell, Greg Kinnear, Alan Arkin. Like, now we know Paul Dano, and like, you know, like it's just wild. Like, there are definitely.
Well, it's interesting that
this is the whole distinction of indie film, is the fact that it does have all of that stuff attached to it with this like independent pitch to it that we don't always buy, because it does have things like a huge cast or a big director or a famous writer. Like, it's the whole difference between independent cinema and indie film. Is like, when I think of an indie film, I think of a movie made by a guy like this, but pretending he has no money. Like, what's the song? Common People, right? I want to live like common people live, so I'm going to make a movie, but this time I'm going to make sure that I have restraint. And like, then they make the movie for $30 million instead of the $65 million they normally would. And it's like, you didn't quite still hit that though. And this movie stinks of that.
I get that. And I will say, just interesting, because we are celebrating the 20th anniversary of Little Miss Sunshine. Carell was nobody when that movie was made. And then,
are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, that's...
Carell was nobody?
Carell was
on The Daily Show before that? Carell had...
Okay, so he was somebody to fucking comedy nerds, but he hadn't broken through to the mainstream before that film. So, like, it's one of those ones, like, it's just an interesting thing where, like, you like...
Greg Kinnear.
Well, Greg Kinnear, you know I love Greg Kinnear, right? I would be talking about Dear God right now if you would allow me to.
Like, we could argue all we want about whether or not you know who Steve Carell was, but, like,
Right. No, I'm not...
I knew people who knew who Steve Carell was.
Well, I'm not trying to fight. I'm not trying to fight up with you about it. What I'm trying to say is that it's such an interesting moment there, because he was, like, when they put him in that film... he was not this huge ticket item that we think of him as when that film released. Like, it's so funny. They're like, they had Steve Carell in it. And they're like, yeah, but they were like happy that somebody who was on The Daily Show had agreed to be in their movie at the time. Like, it was not a thing where like, we got the Office guy. He didn't become the Office guy until like, that film had been shot and they were trying to sell it.
So you know 40-Year-Old Virgin came out the year before, right?
Yeah, I know that. I'm done. You know when Little Miss Sunshine was... Okay. But it was made... But I'm saying... But it was one of those films that was...
made in 2005 and released in 2006.
Yeah. But again, that was
already been in...
But it was also...
He'd already been in Anchorman.
Yes.
He'd already been in...
So he had been in Anchorman. Like, okay, good. But it's Anchorman. But the
Bruce
story...
Almighty, so we'd already seen him as Evan, which eventually he would get his own movie in Evan Almighty. Like, yeah, but Steve Carell was... we don't need to keep having this talk, but like, I'm not going to sit here and act like Steve Carell was nobody when he was in Little Miss Sunshine. That's ridiculous.
But he was. Like, that's the thing. It was made before the 40-Year-Old Virgin had released. It was made before he became Michael Scott on The Office. It's just that weird timeline thing, and that's all I'm trying to talk about, is how interesting that part of it is. Because like, you saw Little Miss Sunshine and most people were probably like, oh shit, Steve Carell's in this, but when they were making it, he was not that Steve Carell that demanded that attention. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to fight against you or anything. It's just one of those interesting things about how Jim Carrey, The Mask was done. The Mask was shot and in the can, and then they're like, we don't know when to release this movie. And then Ace Ventura hit as hard as it did, and that's when they released The Mask. Because they're like, the world is now ready for this. I'm just trying to support the whole. I don't
think that's what happened with Little Miss Sunshine, by the way. I don't think they held on to it.
No, they didn't.
Was famous enough to release it.
They didn't hold on.
They just made it and put it out.
Right. What they did. They made it and they put it out, but it was shot before he was Andy and the 40-Year-Old Virgin, and shot and ready to go before The Office. That's just the interesting thing. I was just trying to share a fun fact. I'm sorry. But it's an interesting thing, like, because of course you'd think of, it had Steve Carell in it, Little Miss Sunshine. But like, there are slews of articles written about the fact that he wasn't the type of person who would have name recognition at the time they shot the film. That's it. I've said it. I'm sorry. We got real derailed on this. But it's because what we're talking about is just the nature of the indie film. And it's a thing that we've talked about multiple times on this show. So I understand, like, falling ass backwards into this film that is very indie coded. But I didn't even consider that because, first of all, this is the first time I've watched this film. I had never seen Mrs. Winterbourne before today, where we're recording an episode talking about it. So I look at that cast and I'm like, holy shit, why did this film fail? It had everything going for it. But really, it didn't. Of course it failed.
I mean, tell me what about this movie looks like a studio was okay with what was going on. What thing do you think a studio looked at and went, oh yeah, this is going to be a hit? Like, I think that there is something to talk about with this movie. I think it is an endearing film, and I'm not mad that I watched it, but I fail to see what anybody watched in the final make of this movie and thought, we did it.
I mean, it's hard because, like, again, I'm going off of Richard Benjamin stuff, and his stuff was always kind of like off kilter, but found an audience. Like something like Milk Money, right? That's another movie that the studios, like, you look at that movie and like, how the fuck did this film get made? But the studio signed off on that one. They cleaned it up a lot because the original script was much darker. So this is just a film that, like, honestly, I think Richard Benjamin goes, my last film, studio interference ruined it, is why it didn't do it. Let me just take the reins on this one. And we discovered, maybe it wasn't the studio, Richard. Maybe you just got some weird ideas that the world is not ready for. And that the world might still not be ready for 30 years later. Which is a sad thing to say, because I really enjoyed my time with this film. But, yeah, I can admit that it's a weird fucking movie.
Yeah. No, I mean, there is some shit that just happens in this movie that, again, it comes out of left field. It's some of the darkest shit you can think of. And we're still supposed to just then be on board with some of the stuff that happens in terms of the romantic comedy aspect. But, like, I haven't recovered from the train crash that I saw 30 minutes ago. I'm not here to, I can't laugh at this right now. It's you know, and I personally have a real issue with the mistaken identity kind of storylines. It really kind of it sets off something in me like nails on a chalkboard type thing. And so, like, I understand that a lot of this movie is that, and so I'm sure my bias in that regard is also part of the problem. But, like, it feels so, I mean, to be frank, a lot of this movie feels kind of gross.
That's understandable. I can't argue against that part of it, because it is one of those situations. This would be an easy nominee for Movie Twin with While You Were Sleeping. Like, that's what it felt like in so many ways.
Interestingly, though, While You Were Sleeping, pretty famously remembered and beloved by a large group of people.
Right.
But I don't know how you feel about it. I personally think that is too weird for me, but much like I do with this movie. But yeah,
I mean, I like a young Sandy Bullock. I'll be honest with you. I'm a big fan of a young Sandy Bullock. But if I'm going to watch a 1995 Sandy Bullock film, I'm probably going to choose The Net. I will admit that. Freely, I will admit that The Net is my preferred, like, 95 Sandra Bullock film. And if I get to choose of all the Sandra Bullock films, is The Bionic Woman Meets the $6 Million Man, where she plays the like, her whole neurological system is replaced with bionics in that one. That's a good one. That's a good TV movie. I'll admit it. I'm sorry to get derailed with Sandy Bullock, but the success of something like While You Were Sleeping, because you said definitely something that is beloved, I think is another part of how this film gets made. Because they're like, it's like a bit of a darker turn on While You Were Sleeping, right? And what did everybody say about that movie? That it was kind of weird, that it was kind of hard. What if the brother, Peter Gallagher, instead of, like, being saved, he was dead, right? People are going to love this movie. People are going to absolutely love Mrs. Winterbourne. And that just see that as the argument.
Yeah.
Because it is.
So
one of those...
this is a movie about a young woman. I think we should finally.
Yeah, we should probably talk about the film.
Synopsis.
We've been fighting about movies, not really fighting, just kind of having a spirited discussion. I'm not mad at you, CJ. I want to make sure that you know that. I certainly hope you're not mad at me.
I was defending Steve Carell's honor,
and that's understandable. It's just one of those. The timeline of it all, sort of just situations, is incredible on that one. I mean, I'm admitting that is I finally watched Little Miss Sunshine for the first time this year. Like, it's one of those films that I never sat down and watched tip to tail. But because I worked at a video store when it came out, like, some parts of it had been ruined for me.
The discussions that I heard around me were nothing about like, oh, look at this new guy, Steve Carell. It was all, oh my God, Steve Carell can do more than just what he's been doing. See, by that point, he had already established himself as the funny guy. So like to say that he was unknown is hard for me to swallow, because literally the conversation was about how he was playing out of type. So like, how do you play out of type if nobody knows what your type is?
Right. Well, you play out of type because of the other things that you have done. Like, I get it. I understand that he was not an unknown when that film released to wide audiences.
Yes.
But yeah,
because of the other things he had done. Right. Okay. Yes.
All right. We're done. We're done. I love you, CJ. I love you. We don't need to focus on this part. I thought it was just a fun little thing to share. I'm sorry. Let's talk about
Mrs.
Winterbourne.
It's not fun. It's a made up thing.
It's not made up. It's... That's the fact that you call it made up is the thing that upsets me, because it's a fact that like he was known for smaller roles, and then he was cast in this by those smaller roles, and then he suddenly became like royalty in Hollywood before the film released. That's just how it happened, or at least that's what the multiple articles that I read say. Let's talk about Mrs. Winterbourne. I'm sorry that I love Steve Carell. I'm not trying to challenge his honor. Right? All I want to do is talk about Rooster, which is Steve Carell proving how great Steve Carell is.
Like, but it also, you could remove Steve Carell from the whole point I was making, and my point still stands. I think that's where I'm a little weirded out.
Okay,
about
I get that.
Into this is like, my original point was that Little Miss Sunshine was a movie made by very powerful players, but for very little money, so it gets to be called an indie film. Much like this movie was made for very little money, still didn't even make it back.
Players.
I mean, there's only 4 people in this movie. Like, there's really only 4 people in this whole movie and a baby. Like, which is a crazy like concept, right? Like, I mean, I guess 6 if you consider the ex, and right, and then the ex's new partner, who we find out at the end has a major role to play. But yeah, so this movie starts out with Ricki Lake as a young woman who has moved to New York to like try and make it. And she's not succeeding. She ends up with a shitty job. She ends up with a shitty apartment. She ends up with a shitty boyfriend who ends up becoming an abusive boyfriend. So she ends up leaving him, which is good. Like right away,
for her.
Like, the second that he shows, yeah, she's out. She's just fucking out. And so at that point, she finds out that she knows she's pregnant. She's on her own. She no longer has a place to live or anything like that. And she finds herself on a train. How does she end up on a train?
And Guardian Angel at Grand Central Station.
Like, that's right. That's
100% what happens. Is
yeah, also, there is a man that appears and then disappears like the wind.
Yes, he's a homeless, he's an unhoused gentleman who she has just confronted Steve DeCunzo, saying that like she's out of money. She was staying at the YMCA, but apparently they had time limits on that. My guess is that like she paid for a certain amount of time and then she just couldn't re-up it. It's just so weird how it's presented, where like my time at the YMCA was up, as if like we'll let you stay at the YMCA for exactly 13 and a half days and then you have to leave. It's the cornerstone of the YMCA, really. So that day, I mean, the other thing I want to make sure is that, like, when we say abusive boyfriend, is all mental abuse. We never see him hit her, but he gaslights her. He lies to her.
He does.
When does he hit her? I missed that.
They pull away. The camera goes away from it, but it's when he first finds out that she's pregnant and calling her a slut and kicking her out. There's a moment where he raises his hand. It cuts to outside.
Okay.
She's holding her face, crying as she runs out of the house.
So
I don't know what that is other than he fucking slapped her.
That's fair. I mean, I just think that, like, I just wanted to make sure that, like, is not... there's mental abuse that's there, and then that is the thing that does it. And I just want to highlight the fact that, like, mental abuse is also abuse in a relationship, right? Because so often in television shows and movies and the entertainment we see, it's physical abuse that is the focal point. But him going to his friends and being like, you slept with Connie, didn't you? And the guy being like, no, I never fucking touched her. And then he like winks at him and says, yes, you fucking did. So that his friend will say that he slept with her so he can deny the fact that he's the father of her child. Like, that's fucked up. I want to make sure people understand how fucked up Steve DiCunzo is as a character.
In like 10 minutes. That's the other thing. He's only on screen for, at this point, only about 10, 15 minutes.
But he does have enough time to do close-up magic. Motherfucking close-up magic. The secret fucking theme of Brendan Fraser History Month 2026. But yes, so she's out of anything. She goes to him to confront him because she has nowhere to stay. Finds out that he's with a new girl, and he throws her a quarter. She then, in the pouring rain that I don't think we've seen in this world since the 90s, right? Real Hollywood in the 90s rain, where everybody has an umbrella, and poor little Ricky Lake's Connie Doyle only has a newspaper. She goes to Grand Central Station, which is smart, right? Like, I was thinking about, like, being homeless in New York. That was the thing that went through my head. And it's like, that quarter buys you a cup of coffee. You could probably stay at a diner on that cup of coffee all night. And then you have a night to figure out what your next step is going to be. She does the next best thing, which is to go to Grand Central Station, which, because it's literally open 24 hours a day, you make yourself small, you can hang out there for a long time. And as she's entering, she passes by I believe he's credited as Homeless Man. Yeah, Homeless Man, played by Nesbitt Blaisdell. And he asks for a quarter, and she's like, sorry, that's all I have. And then he follows her. And, like, real how scary New York used to be. Not that New York is not scary now. It's just cleaner. But, like, he comes because he sees that she's clearly in distress. And he tries to help her, and she freaks the fuck out. Like, don't touch me, stay the fuck away from me. And then they're sitting together on the Grand Concourse stairway, and he gives her, he gives her a flyer for a shelter. And I really like, because, like, by all accounts, this guy is meant to be a 90s movie angel. Right? Which is such a weird thing, but goddamn, there were so many angels in 90s movies. I suddenly understand why that episode of The Simpsons was about people believing in angels.
Well, it's one of the things touched on in there's a bunch of famous screenwriting books from the 80s and 90s. Again, much like the self-help books of the 90s, the screenwriting books of the 80s were something else. Basically, page number 1 was like, do as much coke as you can. And then but there was, where we get the idea of the concept of like save the cat and stuff like that. I do believe like the like ex machina, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like flashpoint is like, is something that is actually talked about in those, in that way. Like it is literally what they are teaching people to do when they write these movies at this time. And it's like, and say what you want about like how that kind of shit happens. We need to have a good education system teaching kids how to do it this way so that there can then be people who experiment in other ways. But like, we need that to keep going. So like, I'm not going to sit here and knock them using a pretty standardized trope at this point, but you're not wrong. It is a huge thing at this time because I mean, basically everybody's being told that's how you make a movie.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that, like, as somebody who's written an actual screenplay, writing your first screenplay is the hardest thing to do. So, like, if having an angelic figure who has to move the plot along gets you through that first screenplay, then go for it, right? I understand why it is the lesson, and then hopefully you can build from that. Though some writers never do, right? I can't, none jump to mind right now that I want to talk about. Well, but
and this is one of the more egregious ones because this is one of the more egregious moments of it, though, because on top of everything, it doesn't really matter. Like, he could have still been there when she looked back and she could have just said thank you and the scene could have still ended. Like, there's no benefit, like, to him being mystical in any way. Why can't he just be a good dude?
Right. I actually think it weirdly plays into part of what I brought up with our Darkly Noon episode last week, in terms of, like, we were so, like questioning religion in the 90s, which is like the cult of sales being sort of like a surrogate for us losing our grip on religion as the thing that everybody had faith in is actually kind of a weird like next step to that. So I almost feel like one of the reasons why it exists in this film is that nod to the camera of like, this is fucking ridiculous, isn't it? Like, honestly, I would not be surprised if in the original script that guy is there and he's just like, there's a pretty good homeless shelter over here. I can give you this flyer for it. And then she says thank you and moves on. But then when like Faith Sutton gets there and he's doing punch up, he's like, well, have him say the line about they'll pray at you, but the food is decent. And then we'll focus on her and he's gone. Because, like, just the ridiculousness of this guy being one of those screenwriting angels that we see in literally everything right now. It actually strengthens your argument as to whether or not this is meant to be a straight, serious film or is meant to be a little bit of satire, wink, wink, nudge, nudge to the camera and the audience.
Yeah, I mean, because it's not like the movie ever comes back around to the concept of religion in any meaningful way. There is a church, and the marriage that happens in this movie does happen within like at least a Catholic setting, I guess. Yeah. Like they make it look as Christian as possible. But there is no moment where anybody is saying this is what God would want me to do, or I'm doing this because it's what I've been brought up on. Like nobody seems to be pushing like a full religious edge in any way. So it's weird to kind of have this moment of mysticality that is not in any way related to any of the religious imagery, and to never bring it up again. It does almost feel like it must have been a joke, right? And like that's kind of where a lot of the humor in this movie falls for me. I can't always tell when I'm supposed to laugh or not, and not in like a good way. Like, oh, if I don't laugh, I'll cry. I mean, like, it's like watching an old time comedian get to a punchline and you're just like, I lost the plot somewhere. Why is this the funny part? Like every joke in this movie for me was a moment of me having to think back about like, okay, this is the payoff for that. I got it. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. It's not really that rewarding sort of callback thing, right? Like I remember when I became an amateur improv teacher while we were at university because they wanted to do an improv showcase for the incoming freshmen. And they're like, Devin, you're really good at improv, so you're in charge of this. It was like the only time I was ever given any control over an acting project while we were in school together. And so it was a bunch of people from my graduating class together in a room. And like I had to teach them how to do improv. I'm not qualified to do that. I just want everybody to understand that I understand that. And my thing is like the best thing that you can do is go for the callback. This movie does not have like there are callbacks, but none of the callbacks are rewarding. It like calls back to the smallest things. Like if like Trinity's own Peter Garrity playing the father, right? Playing the Catholic priest in this film. Like, if he were not a character in this movie, but on the day of the wedding, it was frickin' Nesbitt Blaisdell who was the priest, that'd be fucking something. Or there's a great moment with the organist who looks like Santa Claus, where they're like trying to come out at the, we have skipped over this movie. We got to talk about what this movie's about. Like, I'm sorry. I know that we're skipping there. Like, have that had been the same sort of homeless guy that she had done? Like, there were so many moments to have that guy come back and they don't. And honestly,
I wanted him to be the killer. I was ready for him to be the killer at the end of the movie.
No, like, unfortunately,
let's not forget there is also a mystery.
There's a murder mystery in this. Oh my God. Like the fact he doesn't come back. Honestly, all that stuff in there with the Catholic priest, also feels like ways to jab at the hypocrisy of religion. Because you have that great moment where Ricky Lake's like, you can't take my baby. He'll lose his fucking mind if he doesn't have like easy access to my tits. And they're like, tits is fine, right, father? And he's like, yeah, tits is good. And then the usage of the word ass, honestly, if this film had an agenda, right? Like, if this film had any sort of agenda, like, they do kind of want to poke fun at the hypocrisy of religion. And
Sure.
that's like, okay. So you're right. Why is the homeless guy at the beginning of this movie? Also, like, the homeless guy at the beginning of this movie, we're like not even 10 minutes into this film. We have focused much on the build of this movie. But, like, it just feels like more of their, like, let's stick at the fucking religion in this one, right? It's any time we can give a jab. So she winds up on the concourse, I guess because she's going to take the subway to the shelter, which we've established that she has no fucking money. The homeless angel man does not give her any money. He only gives her the shelter's information. So, like, why a train is going to be the solution, I'm not entirely sure. But because Grand Central Station is just so busy, Connie Doyle accidentally winds up on a train to Boston, Massachusetts. Like you do, I guess. Like,
again, divine intervention somehow like mixes her up in a way. This is what people talk about though when they talk about how there's just contrived moments of this movie, or there's shit that just happens just because it moves the plot along. She has to be on a train. She has to be heading for Boston. So let's make up this whole thing about how she just got lost in the train station, I guess, and then ended up on this woman who is at like the end of her rope and desperately needs to find help, is not paying attention to what train she gets on and ends up going to Boston.
Yeah. And, like, she kind of gets, like, pushed in there by, like, the crowd. It's so weird. So then she's on the train.
By Jesus, Stefan.
But no. You fucking dick. I love you. I wish that, like, the homeless guy, you know, that's it. You don't have him disappear. You have them walking to the train together. He's like, yeah, we could take the D train to the shelter together. And then he just pushes her onto the Boston train. And then the door closes and he's waving as she's riding away. That would be more like, what the fuck is happening, than just like a weird sort of thing occurring. But yeah, so she's on this train, and I don't know how many people have like traveled by train, but the weirdest fucking thing about trains is you're allowed to get on them and then they ask for your ticket. I think it's the craziest thing about train travel. Like, am I wrong? You've done this, right? You've traveled by train, correct?
I mean, it's a pretty, 100 times. Yeah. That's how I used to get back and forth to Rhode Island from when I lived in Ohio. It was easier for me to just get on a train at midnight, and then I could just sleep the whole way and be fresh and ready by like 10 the next day. Yeah. But there was this idea that like, what are you going to do if you don't have it? Like you're only really kind of screwing yourself, unless all you need to do is go one stop, at which point it's like no harm, no foul, right?
Yeah. like
you get on, I don't have a ticket. You get off, boom, you just look at free train.
So by that same logic, you could take the longest train trip ever if like, oh, I got on the wrong train. All right, we'll let you off at the next stop. And then you just get on the next train and you go stop by stop. Because you're right. Like,
I'm sorry. Do you think that if they eject you from the train, they don't then make sure that
everybody knows
to do that?
Yeah, I know.
First of all, I'm sure that they radio out at least a description of you.
Yeah. I just like the idea of you're like, yeah, one stop's fine, and you're like, and that's where we come to my favorite part of the Hitchhiker's Guide to Railway Travel. Don't make a big deal. Be like, oh, just you kick me off at the next stop. Wait 2 trains and then get on another train and pull the same scam. You'll eventually get to Chicago. It'll take you 7 days and like 12 trains.
Just talking about railway
theft,
homeless that existed.
But yeah, so
you have a proper term these days
for that term. I don't think there is. Cause yeah, like that's, well, no, I don't know. Drifter, is Drifter still okay? Like,
Drifter.
Yeah. Like
Drifter's weird, but Drifter. Yeah. I mean, that's what they were. Yeah.
Yeah. That's essentially what you're doing. But yeah, so she's on a train. Nomads.
Railway nomads.
Yeah. Yes, the railway nomads. But yes, so she's on the train. She doesn't have a ticket, and then here comes the conductor. Well, I guess it's like, I don't know. Is the conductor, is that the person who takes your ticket, or is the conductor the person who drives the train?
That's the engineer.
The engineer. Okay, yeah. So the conductor comes by to take her ticket. She does not have a ticket, and then rather than explain, which would be perfectly normal and natural that, like, I got pushed onto this train and I couldn't get off. Like, she decides to run from the conductor saying, "My ticket's with my husband." And that's when she comes upon tall drink of water, fucking indie heartthrob Brendan Fraser as Hugh Winterbourne. He looks so good as Hugh. Like, I was disappointed when the reveal happened later, because he just looks so good in that first scene. Like, obviously, I celebrate Brendan Fraser History Month every May. He could get it, but Hugh Winterbourne could get it. So Hugh Winterbourne sees this woman in distress, says, like, "She's my wife," and gives over the ticket, which he has 2 tickets because he's traveling with his actual wife. That's the other thing about train travel, Sejan. How do they reconcile it, right? Like, if they accidentally mess something up, who's gonna know?
Yeah, no, that's the way. Look, that's what train travel always was, man. It's a mode of travel that depended heavily on the kindness and straightforwardness of strangers, and it's why it has gone to the wayside, because we just aren't that kind of person anymore. It's because it was very easy to screw the system, and it was just kind of assumed that you wouldn't do that because this was a thing we all needed, a public utility that got us around and made things like livable in this country. So maybe don't fuck with it was just kind of a way that we just let that work for a while. But yeah.
Yeah. So Hugh is very kind to Connie, takes him back to the sleeper car that he has. Like, he has a room booked on the train, which is, when you think about it, kind of hilarious because he's going from New York to Boston, but he's also rich, right? And also they just flew in from Paris. Like,
well, and his wife is very
pregnant. She's pregnant. She's very pregnant.
So, like, I think that's also part of it, is like, yes, they are rich and they're flexing their rich muscles in this moment. But from what we learn about Hugh later in the movie, I think legitimately it's fair to assume that he got this space because it was a nice, quiet, safe space for his very pregnant wife.
Right. And that's the thing. So we meet the actual Patricia Winterbourne, who is the wife of Hugh, and she and Ricky Lake's Connie Doyle are both massively pregnant. Like, I think it's a great joke where she's like, "So how far along are you?" And Ricky Lake's like 12, 13 months. Like, I loved that joke. That joke made me smile. It really did. So they bond over the fact that they're both young women who are pregnant. And here's the message I took away from the film. The idea that it's bad luck to wear someone else's wedding ring, that's super true. That is the super truth. Because, you know, her fingers are getting swelled from, like, the water weight. You retain water when you're pregnant. That's a known fact. So Patricia wants to take off her wedding ring so that it doesn't cut off circulation to her finger. She ends up losing it underneath the seat. Connie's the one who finds it. And then she's, like, looking at it like it's a beautiful ring. And Patricia's like, "Go ahead, put it on, try it on." And, you know, Connie's like, "No, it's bad luck. I'm not going to do it." Patricia's like, "Luck, bad luck. Just try the ring on." She slips the ring on her finger, and immediately the train is in a crash. Like, it is.
Yeah, like fucking Final Destination.
Fucking karma.
Like, yeah.
And Hugh and Patricia are both killed in the wreckage. But Connie Doyle survives and has given birth to a child, a baby boy. Unfortunately, because she was wearing the wedding ring and was in the sleeper car when they found her, everybody assumes that she is Patricia Winterbourne. And really kind of gross, just like amazingly gross, nobody will listen to her in the beginning of the film when she's trying to say there's been a mistake. I'm not Patricia Winterbourne. Instead, they just knock her out with a sedative. That freaking Joker nurse lady. That lady scared me, Sejan. I don't know if I'm going to be able to ever sleep again.
Well, so you talked about how this movie seems to be taking digs at things like religion, right? And then there's a lot of digs that it takes against women's healthcare. I think that the religious aspect comes from a female view as well, right?
Yeah.
I think that this is where I'm talking about, like, this movie seems very, like, female focused. The ways in which it talks about the care that is given to pregnant women, or rather the lack thereof, to the point where a woman could be a completely different woman and nobody wants to fucking like listen to her explain that is a dark thought about that. But you know what's even darker is that 30 years later, I think you could still make that kind of joke.
Yeah, that's the thing. Also, she is staying at St. Declan's in Stamford, Connecticut. So it is, by all accounts, a religious hospital, which is a thing that also. So if we are still trying to get the digs in. So constantly, Connie is trying to say that she's not Patricia Winterbourne, that there's been a mistake. And then she gets a phone call from Hugh's mother saying, I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. I want to meet my grandchild. I've sent a car for you. And she goes to leave the hospital and is approached by Paco, played magnificently by Miguel Sandoval, who takes her and says, you are Mrs. Winterbourne. It's what it says on your bracelet. I'm here to take you to Boston. And they have a great little conversation about, like, what's this? It's a Rolls Royce. Oh, that's like the Cadillac of automobiles. No, the Mercedes-Benz is the Cadillac of automobiles. Cadillac. This is a Rolls Royce. Beautiful. Like, I don't think I could ever be mad at this movie because it's just so charming. Like, it is a charming little film.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it is saved. It is saved immensely by its cast. The work that is going on here. And again, I think on paper, I think the script is an interesting one. And I think if you're reading that at this era where you're like, okay, I'm a bigger name, but I want to do something a little off kilter, right? Or if you're Ricky Lake, this is kind of just what you do.
This
like
is what Ricky Lake does, yeah.
Filmography is a phenomenal list of just wild ass movies, mostly with what's his nuts there,
John Waters,
Hairspray, John Waters, yeah. But like you know this movie is quirky going into making it. It's just that you're taking a gamble on whether or not you're going to execute that quirk in just the right way that the audience is with you or not. And so like we are 30 minutes into this movie and there has been domestic abuse and a train crash that has killed a pregnant woman, and now we have somebody assuming that pregnant woman's identity and basically like talented Mr. Ripleying herself into the family.
But like, the whole time feeling real bad about it. Like, she wants to come clean, but we have seen how people react to her trying to come clean by just like stifling her, shutting it down. But then like you do see sort of this like how much can I get away with? Because also she is a woman who had nowhere else to go. The father of her child, while she was still pregnant with that child, had all but abandoned her. And even if he had not abandoned her, is not a safe haven for her or their unborn child. Now there's an actual child. There's an actual life at stake. So she's like kind of, so she has this great conversation with Paco about like, so Hugh never sent any pictures of me? Oh, Mr. Hugh, he hates cameras. You have to remember the film and then to get it developed and then to pick up the pictures. Like, it's like all of these huge contrivances to make it that like, nobody knows what the actual Patricia Winterbourne looks like. So you're kind of in the clear. And then she gets to the house, which it's got to be in like Marblehead, right? Like it's in that rich part of Boston. Like my thought was Marblehead. And they pull up and it's this huge mansion. And she enters, and then there's Mrs. Winterbourne, Grace Winterbourne, played by Shirley MacLaine, which I love a good Shirley MacLaine. Like, in so many things, she plays like an asshole, or she plays like someone who's villainous. She's so good in this movie. She's so, like, pure as a character.
But still hard. Like,
still hard.
Yes, she's pure, for sure. But she's still hard. Like, she and I think that's just Shirley MacLaine, is that she plays these really confident, assured women. And, like, and they succeed or fail based on that confidence, right? I think that's like part of the character for them, and her in this movie is no different. Yeah. So she introduces, I want to hold my grandson, and then coming down the stairs is Hugh again, because Brendan Fraser again. Because I got to tell you, my family was pretty pissed at me. My family was pretty pissed that like Brendan Fraser's in it to die, and I'm like, just keep watching the movie. Just keep watching the movie. Now, I didn't know that he was going to end up playing
the twin brother of the guy who died at the beginning of the movie. I did not know that they were going to do that. I love that they did it, but when I saw that he
this
was...
is like the most soap opera ever.
Such a soap opera.
Since The Passion of Darkly.
Oh my goodness, it truly is. Like, this is so soap operatic. Where, like, I saw that he was credited as Bill and Hugh in this, but I thought that, like, he would be playing in, like, old photographs his father. Like, that's how I justified it. And then when Hugh died, I'm like, okay, so he's clearly playing, like, his twin brother. Like, that's gonna be what happens. And then that's what happens. And Ricky Lake freaks out just, like, the proper amount in that moment. At the fact that, like, oh my God, like, I'm totally caught. And it's like, oh, no, this is his twin brother. Did he not mention me? Oh, he did. He just didn't mention that you were identical. Which is just a beautiful lie. And I gotta tell you, they're not, because freaking Hugh Winterbourne is hot as shit. I cannot stress to you how freaking attractive. He's Brendan Fraser, right? We've all seen The Mummy. We all know what Rick looks like. But in that moment where he's just like, oh yeah, I was taking a gap year before college, and that kind of turned into a gap decade, and I've just been bumming around Europe until I wound up in Hong Kong, where I met the love of my life. Like, oh, okay.
No, you know, the dual role is a tried and true kind of litmus test for actors, right? Like, you see people that take on the many roles, and sometimes more than two, and like it's impressive when it's done well, and Fraser doesn't disappoint, right?
No,
like, he handles extremely well,
and they do it like they have such good narrative reasons why the two of them are so different as well, like in terms of like what their father expected from it. Like it's real nice. So now Ricky Lake as Connie Doyle under the pseudonym of Patricia Winterbourne. Also, we neglected to mention that Patricia Winterbourne is like also just an orphan. She has no family. She was like moved away.
I was gonna say we haven't talked about why nobody's looking for her, right? Like, is the fact that there is nobody to look for her.
Yeah, there's no one to look for her because she lived in Hong Kong with her father. Like, the best thing is that you're my first conversation with an American since I've been back in America, is like one of the first things she says to Connie. And it's like, ooh, that's crazy. But yeah, so she's...
movies like this are the reason, though, that people think it's so fucking easy to just steal an identity. Like, it's not that people can't get some information about you and use that maliciously, but like the ways that people talk about, I don't know, say immigration and the issues there that they think are present of immigrants coming in and then just stealing the lives of an American person is ridiculous. But it's movies like this that like reinforce that kind of bullshit in people. It is like the ways in which the pieces have to fall into place for her to even get this far are something else. But like, this wouldn't last past 24 hours. The way that this movie makes it, how long does she play along? Like a week, two?
Like at least a week, possibly. If it's so, excuse me, it is for so long. And like, one of the biggest contrivances is just that nobody wants to listen to her. Like, nobody wants to listen to her. And then the only character who, like, starts adding things together is Bill, the living Winterbourne son, played by Brendan Fraser. Because he's like, well, I thought you mentioned that he didn't say that we were identical. And she's like, I don't know why I said that. She's fumbling on the first night in a thing that, like, if anybody cared... Like, the crazy thing about this movie is that it feels like everybody kind of knows that this is clearly not Patricia Winterbourne, yet we all kind of like her, so we're just going to roll with it. We're just going to go with it, because she's funny, she's different, she's not yeah. Like, everybody just kind of rolls with it. So then, she does try to leave a couple of times because she feels like, I'm trying to take advantage of this situation. But like at the end of the day, like her big thing is that like she wants her kid to have somewhere to live and to be safe. So she's got a whole lot of conflict there. And then Shirley MacLaine is like, they have a party and everybody's kind of mean to her at the party, which is, you know, classic, like Pretty Woman style. Pretty Woman also sold a bunch of screenplays, because like this woman who comes in, that's literally where Milk Money got all of its like funding. So it's not surprising that another Richard Benjamin piece might have been part of that same renaissance of like the outsider woman who actually has agency and is ready to like upend this snotty fucking upper crust who thinks they know what a woman has to be. Which I say that like, but like that's like, they were like, that's how they were patting themselves on the back about movies where like a sex worker, it turns out that she can also be a good person, with something like Pretty Woman or Milk Money. Like this one, the worst thing that Connie has is that she is white trash.
If she's even that.
Yeah, right? Like it's just, but that's like the big thing where Bill calls her, he's like, there's a lot of white trash around the fringes. So they have this party, and Shirley MacLaine, like the song, on the sunny side of the street, is a song that apparently her and Hugh used to sing together. And it starts to play, and Jane Krakowski, yes, 30 Rock Jane Krakowski, is like, I thought she was dating Bill, but apparently, like, she's just some blonde woman who's in his, like, atmosphere of the world. She's just like, oh, this was Hugh's favorite song. And then Ricky, like it's so strange because sometimes it feels like she's trying to keep the lowest profile. And then sometimes it does feel like she's trying to like talented Mr. Ripley and lie so that she can endear herself deeper into this family. She's like, oh yeah, I know. Yeah. Hugh and I used to sing this song all the time. So Shirley MacLaine comes over and goes, Hugh and I used to do this song all the time. Do you mind if I sing it to the baby? And so Connie's like, of course, sing it to the baby. But then the two mean girls, played by Jane Krakowski, and I want to name the other one because I recognize her from a bunch of things as well. Sorry, what is your name, ma'am? Jennifer Irwin, who plays Susan. They're like, oh, Mrs. Grace, Patricia should sing it with you. She used to sing it with Hugh all the time. So they go up there, and Ricky Lake does not know this fucking song. Just does not know this song. But she's like able to play with it in that way that like I'm gonna reference it because everybody knows what I'm talking about when I reference this. Baby, It's Cold Outside, where like that was a song that was originally performed by a husband and a wife as like their party trick, because apparently that's what parties were like before, you know, records happened. We'd get a piano and people would just do little performances at parties. I'm really glad that that's not what the world is like anymore, Sage, and I just want you to know that.
Oh, no, you know what it used to be is it used to be a way to show off the kids, you know?
Like the kids would do something
making them take piano lessons, so they're gonna play a little ditty for us. No. There's a phenomenal bit about this in Twin Oaks, not Twin Oaks,
Twin Peaks.
Twin Peaks. Yeah, there's a really fucking Ray Wise just going off his fucking rocker in a scene when after a girl sits down to play piano and it reminds him of his dead daughter, and I'm like, I don't mean to laugh, but I think you're kind of supposed to in that moment.
I mean, that certainly sounds like what would be going for in a Twin Peaks scene. I would laugh at that. That's funny. But yeah, so they go up there and it looks like it's something that they've done their whole life, where she's like kind of like calling back to the lyrics, and then they do it. And I mean, it's Ricky Lake. She can sing. We know that Ricky Lake can sing. So it's this beautiful thing. And then afterwards, she's like, I have to go. I don't belong here. Like, all those people are laughing at me. And and Grace Winterbourne is like, no. I mean, like, we got to do something about your hair. And your makeup is a bit much. And those nails. Basically, she critiques her whole body. And then she's like, you know what? I'm very sorry about that. I've never had a daughter, so I'm not really sure how this is supposed to go. But the inevitable montage, like the makeover montage, happens where she, you know, gives Connie a makeover, takes to get her hair done, whole new wardrobe, puts her name on the checking account, which is just like banana batshit crazy. And then with her new daughter-in-law looking fucking fly as hell. She drops in at Bill at his office and coerces him to take her out to lunch. Which, like, okay, yeah, sure. Let's keep it in the family, Siege.
That's basically, yeah, no, she's definitely like, I mean, for lack of a better word, grooming her for her other son.
For her other son.
Weird.
Yeah, which is
a weird choice. It's a weird choice. I think that's part of why, though, you say that it feels like kind of everybody knows what's going on. What it was more for me is it felt like everybody kind of had their own scheme going on. And so, like, I don't mind so much this moment of her lying about being Patricia, because at the same time, like, this woman is clearly trying to like present her as like a prize to her other son. Like, this is yours now. You inherited everything of his. It's like weird.
Your brother tested her pedigree. We know that she's good stock. Let's keep it in the family, Billiam. Like, it's nuts.
That's how you get a Habsburg chin, man.
Kudos, points to Siegen for the Habsburg chin. So they go out and they have a beautiful afternoon in Boston where they walk the Freedom Trail, which, like, thinking that might not go nice, but it's actually kind of a nice little moment walking the Freedom Trail as he tells a story about how Paco was kind of the father to Bill and Hugh, and they thought history was stupid, and then he bought them muskets and little paper Minutemen hats, and they ran through the streets pretending they were Paul Revere in a red coat. Like, it's a nice little moment, right? So then they get lunch, and it's a hot dog, which, I mean, Brendan Fraser so effortlessly at the hot dog cart. May we see a wine list, please? It's just so good. Like, this movie is so, it's just so pleasant, and it's so cute, but, like, at the same time, like,
except when it's not.
This guy's
a problem.
This guy's kind of an asshole.
I'm not trying to, like, cut you off.
No, you're right.
Like, there are moments in this movie where it's not that, right? And I think that's exactly why I have a hard time with it, is because you're not wrong. There are tons of these moments where, like, I mean, essentially, you joked earlier about how we had only gotten 30 minutes into the movie, but the truth is that this movie goes, and then comes to a screeching halt for about 40 minutes. While we watch her kind of assume this life of Patricia and, like, be kind of in with this family. And there's moments where she might get caught or she won't. But really, like, nothing really changes too drastically within like that 40 minutes. So, like, for a movie that was moving at a clip for the first 30 minutes, you feel the next 40 suddenly not. Like, it's a weird bit of like sitting at the top of a roller coaster a little too long almost.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not wrong. It is a little bit like the anticipation of when this breaks bad. Hopefully you're, like, okay with all this edging, because it's a lot of edging.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
it's a lot of edging. But then they also go to the Boston Public Garden, which is nice. You see the swan boats. You have that nice moment where she's like, "Oh, can we go to the bar from that show Cheers?" Which, again, the fact that that's not in the trivia anywhere from this movie, it blows my mind. It just blows my mind. I have to be honest about it. And yes, I mean, I'm a big Cheers guy. If you've been listening to the show and you don't know that, you're just choosing to ignore it. And if this is your first episode, I apologize 90 minutes into this episode for just how insane this episode of the show has been. From the bottom of my heart. That apology is just from Devin Decker. I don't want to speak from Siegen. But they have this beautiful thing, and then they stop at a jewelry store because Connie, as her, like, one prized possession in the world, is a locket with a picture of her mother in it. And it's just got, like, a shoelace as the chain. Right? It's like a locket on a shoelace that she wears around her neck. So they see this jewelry store and it's like, "Oh, can we stop? Because I'd like to get an actual chain for this locket." So they go inside and she's like, "It's beautiful, but it's oh so expensive." And then Bill reminds, he's like, "Didn't my mother put you on the checking account? Go on, go for it." The chain, did you happen to clock how expensive the chain was, Siegen?
No, I did not. I was not paying that close attention to that.
$367. When you say that something's expensive and we've seen the world the Winterbournes live in, I'm thinking $1,000, like, as the low end. So I really liked that moment. I liked that moment because it really spoke a lot to the character of Connie. that like
Right.
this is still a lot of money to her. Like it did a lot for her character. I did dig that part. So as she writes out the check, right? It'll be her first check. I'll be honored to be here for it. God, Brendan Fraser is just so charming, even as a character who's supposed to be kind of a dick. Like Bill he's nowhere near the issue of like Steve DiCunzo, but like
No.
he's not the guy you're rooting for. He's very Richard Gere and Pretty Woman before Richard Gere lets his walls down. Like,
but where I think that he gets a step up on Gere is that he has a legitimate concern. He does not think this is the woman who she says she is, and he's right.
And he's
like
correct.
The audience, as an audience member, we know he's correct. So like, for a guy that is feeling that, he is actually very amicable to what's going on. Like there are other ways he could handle that situation that were not this. So like him being a little like kind of standoffish, and then you add to that that's supposed to be the concept of what makes him different from Hugh, is that he is much more like introverted. I mean, eventually he ends up proposing to her, right?
Yeah,
and the proposal is like it's the point of it is that he just rattles it off in like a list of things that he's going to be doing. And he's like, also, you and I will then get married. Maybe we should move that to the top. And she's like, what? Like, are you proposing to me? And he's just like, yes. And then gets down on his knees and walks over to her, and they have a romantic moment together. And like, I was like, that is pretty cute. That is not mean or rude in a way like slamming the slamming the ring box down on her fingers. It like it's not, so it doesn't have anything weird in that regard. He's assumed something which isn't great, but like now they are checking in about it like instantly. So like that's okay. It was a really cute moment, but it is wild that is the way that he chooses to propose. But that is the kind of person he is.
It's not just like a list. It's not like a to-do list either. It is a pros and cons list. It is the pros of her leaving and the pros and cons of her staying or leaving. We'll do column A. That'll be you leaving. Column B will be you staying. So column A, well, nothing. Like, there's no reason why you should leave. But then, like, all the things he's like, you'll be in a home where you're loved. You'll have access to money, right? You'll have all this. We could be together and then eventually get married. Like, it is just, like, such a, like, one of the pros of you staying is that you win me eventually as a husband. But it's presented in such a, like, cute sort of, there's no other way that I would know how to ask you to be my wife other than the rigidity that has been instilled in me. Like it's cute. Yeah. But to go back to her writing that check, so she writes out her check for $367.50, right? Let's talk about the full price of the chain that she's bought for the locket. But she signs the check Connie Doyle. And then she realizes it, rips it up, and we're left to wonder whether or not Bill saw this slip up on her part. And then we're no longer wondering because we cut to him in his office, and he has had his secretary, Vera, look into the name Constance Doyle, and they find that she was amongst those who were dead on the train, which makes no fucking sense. And this is not a thing that I was prepared to talk about until our whole discussion at the beginning about the contrivances of this movie. Connie Doyle was not meant to be on that train. So there's no way her name would have been on any sort of manifest or anything like that. The only way that they would think it is that Patricia happened to be holding Connie's like purse at the time that she died. And then, like, her face is so mangled that they assume that she is freaking Ricky Lake is crazy.
Yeah, no, it's like, right. As much as there is this moment with the ring, the amount of work they have to do to make us believe that Connie could be mistaken for Patricia, we are at least given a handhold in the fact that she puts the ring on, she's in the car that's expected to be, all of these things that, yeah, okay. I think at first somebody assuming that that's who this is fine. Whether or not they should stick to that assumption is a different conversation. But like, there is none of that work put in for Patricia to somehow be mistaken for Connie. There's nothing.
None.
I think it would have been more like, it would have been actually, I think, more upsetting and more kind of to the point if he could find nothing about her.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he looks that name up and they're like, there was no one by that name on the train, right? Like, first of all, there would have been no record on her because she was not meant to be on that train, unless the angelic homeless person who set her down that path also magically updated the manifest to show that she was supposed to have a ticket, right? And let's be honest, what else was heaven doing in the 90s? We have time to make people fall in love and make sure that the paper trail is rock solid.
It also mistakes, and it also really mistakes what train travel really was like, because like we were saying before, It was really loosey-goosey. 90% of the time, you didn't have to provide any type of identification to buy a train ticket. You just needed to have a ticket in hand by the time the conductor came by. That's all that really mattered.
Right. And that's the other thing, right? Like, we didn't even talk about the fact that, like, you steal somebody's ticket, you get that ticket punched, you're golden. And then when they get to that person, they're like, you don't have a ticket, sir. It's like, well, I bought one. It's just not here. Like, there's no way to track who that was. Like, it really is the Wild West of travel. It remains that to this day. Sorry, but
right. That being said, the just to clarify though, the sleeper car would have that kind of record, because that would be something that they would have, like, so like the idea that they knew Patricia is on the train, I totally get. The caring that Connie was ever on the train, I don't know how anyone would ever figure her out or care to figure that out.
Exactly. And again, it's not like she had a ticket on that train. So even if we're supposed to believe that, like, she needed to facilitate some sort of identification to get on that train, there should be no record of her. It's just a wild little moment. So he finds out about that, and he rushes to his mother's home to tell her about it. And that's where he finds out that she has called Ty Winthrop, the family attorney, to update her will to include Patricia and the new grandson, whose name he's been given Hugh's name. He is Hugh Donald Arthur Winterbourne II, which I love a second, right? I always think it's weird when it's not a junior, but then I actually talked to somebody who was the second one, and he's like, if I were a fucking junior, everybody would have called me Junior. Like, people call me by my name because I'm the second. And I'm like, I didn't mean
the other thing, traditionally, junior is supposed to be, I am this man's son. He is my senior, I am his junior. Whereas the second would imply, I had a grandfather 10 years ago or 10 generations ago that was named this or something. So like this, so I am the second. But so there is kind of a standard rule for when that is supposed to be applied, and this is not it.
No, exactly. But yeah, so he is named Hugh Donald Arthur Winterbourne II, and they're going to be added to the will. And Ricky Lake, like, this is like the come to Jesus moment for her, but she's not going to tell who she is, because we have also established that Shirley MacLaine's character Grace has a heart condition. So there is this like real fear about, if I were to tell her, like, the truth of this whole thing could kill her. Right? Like, they do so much to make you, like, root for Ricky Lake to continue telling the lie. It's insane. So she's like, I want to add you to my will because you're part of this family now. And Connie has this great speech about, like, that's not what this is about. You don't need to do this. Like, it's just enough that you're giving me a place to live and that you've welcomed me in. You do not need to enter me into your will. Please do not sign that piece of paper. And it's this beautiful moment where Grace takes her face in her hands and goes, I wanted to do it before, but now I know I'm doing the right thing. Because no, you were not after my son for the money. You were after it for the love, and that love is extended to the family. And that also makes Bill cool his fucking jets, because his cynicism had him assuming the reason that she assumed this identity was to steal their money. But then when given freaking the golden ticket to the Winterbourne fortune, she immediately denies it. And it's a beautiful little moment. But it does mean that, like, we're left to wonder, what was he going to say? How much does he know? Like, it's like this sort of like weird reset on the whole story. But then she still feels like she should leave. She still feels like, I'm taking advantage of this family. Like, they put me in the will now, even though I told them not to. We have to leave to the baby. So she's getting ready to leave, and that's when Brendan Fraser comes in as Bill, and he makes the pros and cons list and ultimately proposes to her, which, again, it's a nice moment. It's a moment that really works. But that's also, well, they've kissed before that, right? Like, Paco hasn't happened yet. Because there's the Paco moment where Paco is the reveal that he's a homosexual and that he was dating the pool repair boy, who in my head is definitely Pip from the Airheads, right? Any pool boy in any movie is probably Pip. And I love that for both of them. I just have to be honest. So he broke Paco's heart. So he's drunk in the pool. So they have to take care of drunk Paco. They make a Paco taco, where it's really more of a Paco burrito, because they wrap him up in his bed sheets so he can't get out. But then he forces them to tango, and that tango leads them to kissing multiple times and realizing how much the feelings they have for each other. Just I don't want to gloss over that fact. But then at the wedding rehearsal dinner, like a little letter had come saying, "Who are you and whose baby is that?" Like to Patricia. And so she's freaking out about that, but she doesn't really do. Oh, that's what happens. So they have the tango thing. The whole will thing happens before that. And then she gets the letter, and that's what makes her say we have to leave. That leads to the pros and cons list. Proposal. The pros and cons proposal list. And then after a rehearsal dinner, Steve DeCunzo shows up, and he's like, "You're going to meet me at my shitty hotel tomorrow, and we're going to talk about this. Because as the father, I have rights with this baby." And that guy's a fuck. Like, just fuck Steve DeCunzo. But so he asks for $50,000, which she gladly writes him a check for. And then he proposes, "Why don't I kidnap this child? I bet we could get $1 million from the Winterbournes easy to return the newest heir to the throne." And then she's like, "That's a bridge too fucking far. I'm not going to do that." And he's like, "Well, what are you going to do?" So what she does is she goes and retrieves a German Luger pistol from the Winterbourne's armory. We're not going to question why Mr. Winterbourne owned a German Luger. We're just going to glaze past that part. I've actually probably talked about it too much already. And she goes... She goes back to the motel that night with the intention of shooting him, and finds that he is already dead. But then she trips over a rocking horse, causing her to fire the gun that she has, which makes Bill come in to the room because he was there before her, because he didn't want her to do something she would regret, because everybody sees Steve DeCunzo at the fucking rehearsal dinner, and everybody clocks him as just a fucking scumbag. Nobody who sees him is like, "Oh, that's probably, maybe that's somebody she knows from her past." Everybody's like, "Who the fuck is this guy that we gotta deal with now?" It's kind of hilarious in this way of like, we gotta bring this movie to an end, so we just don't have time to like put more narrative into this character and how we all feel about him. Bill shows up and he whisks her away. We also see that frickin' Paco is there in the Rolls Royce. And that way, as they're driving away, she's like, "How could we ever trust each other again? You think I killed him. I didn't kill him." And he's like, "I still trust you." They pull out underneath a bridge overpass, and she goes to walk away. She's like, How can you trust me?" And he's like, "Connie, I trust you." And that's like this reveal that he's known that she's Connie this whole time that they've been falling in love, and that he fell in love with her, not her name. So they're still going to get married, Sejin. Why wouldn't they get married? But then on the day of the wedding, on the day of Mrs. Winterbourne's daughter-in-law's wedding, that was a lot of words, and I apologize for that, for trying to make that work. Two Boston detectives show up, and they're like, "We'd like to speak to Mrs. Winterbourne." So when Shirley MacLaine goes, "Well, I'm Mrs. Winterbourne," they go, "Patricia Winterbourne?" And she's like, "No, that's my daughter-in-law." "Why? What's the thing?" And she's like, "There's been a murder." And she goes, "Oh, that. I did that." And it turns into fucking Spartacus with everybody claiming that they murdered Steve DeCunzo.
Yeah. Basically, everybody tries to take blame for it so that somebody else in line doesn't have to. But all of this is for nothing.
Because the woman that DeCunzo took up with after throwing Connie Doyle out of his life, she's the one who shot him because he pulled the same scheme on her. Got her pregnant and then threw her out. So Ricky Lake's Connie Doyle has a nice conversation with her, and she's like, one of us was going to kill him. I'm kind of glad it was me because look at this beautiful life you have for yourself. And then Connie goes, we're going to get her the best lawyer. The kind of lawyer whose argument is, come on, he deserved it.
I mean, in all honesty, like she says, I want the argument is clearly like that this was a person that put her in a position where this was the only choice she had. And I think that that's a fair argument for somebody to make in court. The court will decide whether or not it works, but I think that that's a fine argument for somebody to make, especially after everything that we've learned about this guy.
Yeah, the fact that and also the fact that like it's not the first time that he's done it, and the last time he did it, what the mother of his unborn child was forced to do was assume someone else's identity through like a crazy, contrived, farcical set of events. Like, this guy will continue to impregnate women and then turn them out into a world that is unwelcoming to them. He needed to be stopped, Your Honor. So then they get married, and in the weirdest bit of this movie, right, everything that we've just talked about happens in this movie. They get married, and the wedding band that Bill buys for Connie is the same exact wedding band that his dead brother had bought for Patricia, but the inscription, instead of reading Hugh and Patricia on the inside, reads Bill and Connie. Which, like, is also kind of nice, because, like, they were about to get married the next day, so he already had that ring ready for her, right? Like, it becomes this movie of, like, we all just missed our timing to, like, share the truth with one another.
Yeah, no, it suddenly, it doesn't become about the lie, right? Like, as much as it is still, like, this is not me saying that they lose the thread or anything like that. I think, like, everything that happens with Steve is all based on the idea that he's about to reveal the truth of the lie and stuff, right? But that the decision at the end of this movie for it to, I mean, it's what makes it a comedy, is that everybody's okay with everything that's happened, right? There isn't anybody that feels like they've been hurt to the point where it's a tragedy, right? The only person that has died in this movie is a person that we have established within the first 10 minutes of this movie is awful, right? And like, so there's this kind of like happy ending sense to this movie, which again is just so hard to sit in, because an hour ago, just some of the most awful, tragic shit I've ever seen on camera has happened. It's just wild to me that this movie gets to a point where it's just playing just a fun little poppy ditty, and as the credits roll, about love, and it's like, what the fuck did I just watch?
Yeah, it's something else. I mean, I would gladly watch it again. If this were ever on cable, I'm stopping and I'm sitting in it. Like, there's just so much goodwill that this film does have that it really does gloss over all of the dark, insane moments within it. For me.
Yeah, we've lost this kind of movie, right?
Yes.
Because like, this isn't the first weird dark comedy we've ever looked at. I mean, like, look at the ways that we looked at Nick's Nuts over on the Sam Cinematic Universe.
Yeah.
We just this is a kind of movie that was being made at this time. It's weird, it's dark, it's edgy, it's got a little bit more money behind it than it probably would have 10 or 20 years earlier, right? Because of the success of other indie films and weird films around it. Like, there's just this idea that, like, this is what people talk about when they say that they felt like you could get away with anything in the 90s. You would just put something out there, and some people would just fucking love it, and sometimes they wouldn't. But that would be okay, because then you'd get another chance to make it. Now, granted, this is for a very particular type of person in the 90s, yes, mostly white, yes, males, but like, but there is a consistent, like, narrative these days about this era. This is an example of what people are talking about when they say that. Now, again, you can parse that apart and talk about ways in which that's fucked up, and I hope that that's something that we did today. But like, this is a movie that took that opportunity to tell a really interesting story about women helping women, and the men around them that have to, I think it's really important that Bill's character, he doesn't just jump on her. He takes the time to listen to her, to do his research, to figure things out. He doesn't just jump. There are a couple of moments when things first start up where he's like, but how would we know this woman is who she says she is? But noticeably, that starts to go away pretty quickly. And then something happens that kind of brings it back up again. So he finally does his research. But like, never at any point do I think that Bill is going to be a danger to her if he figures this out. That's never on the table for me.
Yeah, it's strange. This film, there really feel like there are no stakes until there are suddenly stakes. Like, it really does feel like this safe. Like, when I said it's the same director as Milk Money, and the reaction from my mother and sister were, oh, that tracks because it's very similar to Milk Money. That would be the part of Milk Money that I would compare it to. Is the fact that, like, there is this Malcolm McDowell in the background of that film, right? There is some stuff going on in that movie. But until it actually, like, becomes relevant to the plot, you would think it's just another movie. And then something like Mrs. Winterbourne, like, we know that this movie started with a dead body and with Shirley MacLaine saying, oh yeah, I killed him. So, like, this story is supposed to be what leads up to that moment. And, you kind of just forget about it till that dude shows up again at the rehearsal dinner. Like, exactly. Like it's and
even then you'd be forgiven for forgetting that he was dead, because he goes from being dead to not being dead because we're doing flashbacks and all of that. Mm-hmm. So then you spend a lot more time with him alive. By the time they get back to him coming back, I'd totally be forgiven if you forgot that this movie started with him being dead on the bed.
Yeah. It's, I don't know, it's wacky, it's wild, it's what the 90s were about in terms of filmmaking. Brendan Fraser does a great job, even though he only plays Hugh for like 2 scenes. He is such a different character than Bill. And even when Bill eventually like comes out of his shell, like he doesn't just suddenly become Hugh. Like, he really did the work to build 2 distinct characters. And it's impressive. It legitimately is impressive to watch that. Mm-hmm. And also, I brought up Fargo at the beginning of this movie, of this episode. Like, this is a Fargo-ass kind of dark comedy in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So it all does speak to 96.
That is a really good pull.
Yeah. Well, and that's just because, Steve Buscemi being Rex in Airheads. And me, for some reason, being like, let's look at where all these characters were 2 years afterwards. Which will be a lot more fun when we come to next week. But before we remind everybody what next week is, Sejan, do you have anything else you want to make sure you get off your chest about Mrs. Winterbourne? Anything that we missed? Anything? Because
1996 is also the year of Bulletproof.
Yes. Yeah, well, I was gonna talk about that next week because 1996 is also the year of Twilight of the Golds, the next film we'll be watching to celebrate Brendan Fraser History Month 2026.
Just because we're just talking though about like darker comedies and things like that. Like,
yeah.
I think that Bulletproof actually in a lot of ways is a lot less dark than this, because it's already in a genre, the action buddy comedy, that already has kind of its own dark edge to it. So it doesn't feel weird in that, but the romantic comedy with the weird dark noir edge to it is a wild pull. It's like taking a Hitchcock movie and turning it into a romantic comedy. It's a choice, and I'm glad they made it. But man, it's weird.
It's a bold choice, and I think there's a reason we don't see it that often. You know what? Also, if you do go back and listen to our Bulletproof episode of the Adam Sandler Cinematic Universe, I actually make a pretty strong argument for it being a romantic comedy. Because Archie and Keats love each other. Like, did no doubt. Like, it's just sort of a remake of The Bodyguard in so many ways. But that's an episode for another time. Go listen to it. It's a good one. I really do like that Bulletproof episode. Yeah. But yes, so you're not wrong, right? Like, 2 years after Airheads, which is a weird sort of dark comedy in and of itself, right? This fucking this fucking band accidentally takes a radio station hostage, right? As they get in over their heads, and suddenly people care what they have to say.
And I think Brendan Fraser as an actor is drawn to this kind of weirdness, right? Because I mean, like, the guy ends up in Monkey Bone, for God's sakes. Like I think there is something to be said about him as a artist, and this being the kind of movie that he wants to be in.
Yes, certainly. But also, I mean, I can see how Buscemi, I mean, it's Buscemi and it was the Coen brothers. So, like, it was probably going to happen anyway, him being in Fargo. But the pedigree that you can track from Airheads to the movies that the three members of the Lone Rangers are in 2 years later, in terms of these like darkly comedic sort of like, there's not a lot of action in this movie, but there's some moments that are kinetic, right? Her walking in with that gun is good. But like, there's also a great moment, like the noir pedigree, finding out that this is in all sense of the word, a remake of a Barbara Stanwyck noir film from 1950 totally tracks, because that moment where he's sitting in his office after he has gotten the telegram from his secretary that Constance Doyle was someone they found dead on the train, is shot like a film noir. Like, I'm like, oh, this is such a film noir shot, not realizing how much of this film was apparently meant to be a film noir. Like, So like, to finally wrap up your question of was it intentional on that, I do think it's something that there was some intent to make it feel film noir-y. And then if you connected with this film, you do that little bit more research, you find out about it, and then you seek that out. And then you see all of the ways they tied to it. I wouldn't be surprised. I'd really like to find it. I think one of the craziest things about this, like, trivia is not the only thing you should look at on IMDb, because it all doesn't land there. The connections is a really crazy, like, place to look, because at the movies with Ebert and Roper, the films that they looked at in one episode that featured Mrs. Winterbourne was Getting Away with Murder, James and the Giant Peach, Jane Eyre, Ghost in the Shell, and Kids in the Hall Brain Candy. Like,
and by Ghost in the Shell, you mean the anime?
The anime one, yeah. Like, so they talk about it in that episode. Clips appear in it as teasers for their next episode. And then the actual episode where they're talking about it, it's Celtic Pride. Remember Celtic Pride? I feel like some really cool guys did an episode on Celtic Pride recently. Mystery Science Theater 3000, the movie. Mrs. Winterbourne, The Substitute, Fear, and Sweet Nothing. So they all, like, they reviewed it. And that's the type of show where they're looking at this movie and Ebert or Roper are totally saying, you know, like, this is a remake of that Barbara Stanwyck film, No Man of Her Own. Like, that's the type of thing they say. And then the type of people who watched Ebert and Roper, who really cared about their critique of films, they would go freaking, like, seek that out.
Yeah.
God. Also, I wanna know how Mrs. Winterbourne came up in the Saturday Night Live episode from April 13th, 1996, during the Weekend Update. And it does have reference to Cheers on their tour of historic Boston. Connie asked Bill to take her to the Cheers bar, which, you know. Let's talk about the fact that, like, also the guy who wrote the film wrote 23 episodes of Cheers. And also apparently this was remade as the film She's No Angel in 2002, which I would not mind looking into at all. Like, I did not think this movie would leave me with so much homework of things to look into. But I really did. It really worked with this. So yeah. So again, anything else you want to say before we wrap this one up? It's Mother's Day after all. I'm supposed to be doing stuff with Mom. It was very nice of her to allow us to watch Mrs. Winterbourne and then allow me to record today. Thanks, Mom. Happy Mother's Day. But anything on your end?
Man, let's get out of here so we can all see our moms.
Let's go see our moms, right? All right, cool. So thank you so much for joining us for this episode of the Say Report, celebrating Brendan Fraser History Month with Mrs. Winterbourne. As a reminder, next week's episode, we're going to be looking at, I think it was made for Showtime. Like, legitimately, I don't know anything else about it other than who's in it and what it's about. Because we'll also be celebrating another 30th anniversary of a Brendan Fraser film. And that film is The Twilight of the Golds, which slight trigger warning on that one, just because of what the plot is about. And then also remember that like it's going to be the two of us who are talking about it, and we are who we are. So just understand
God knows
that
we're not mature enough to handle this subject matter.
I'd like to believe that we are, but Sejin's probably right. But yeah, Twilight of the Golds is one you want to watch so you're prepared for next week's episode. In the meantime, if you want to keep the conversation going, you can join our Discord server. Invitations to join are available wherever we are on social media, which as of this recording is still Facebook and X, formerly Twitter. Navigate to our bio section. There's a link you can click to join the Discord. Or if you're not on social media, but you still want to join the Discord, send an email to us directly, thesayreport@gmail.com. And we can facilitate you with a link to join the Discord. Or if Discord's just too scary and you don't want to be a part of that either, honestly, I get it. We're having some behind-the-scenes conversation about that exact topic here at The Say Report. Just send emails to us, thesayreport@gmail.com, and we'll respond. The most important thing is that if you're writing it for him, Sejin Sarwick, or me, Devin Decker, you just put the name of the Say Reporter you're looking to get in touch with into the subject line, and we'll distribute it appropriately to make sure that your thoughts, hopes, and dreams are only read by the Say Reporter if you're choosing. That said, if you send me something and I think it's like real juicy and worthwhile of talking about on the show, there's a chance I am going to present it reinterpreted to Sejin on an episode of the show. Just keep in mind that any correspondence you have with us, there's a chance that it's going to wind up in an episode of the Say Report. Not during Brendan Fraser History Month when we're focusing on the films of Brendan Fraser that we're watching, but like certainly afterwards. I don't know about Sejin, but I've started a journal for May of 2026 to record everything that has happened to me. And it's already a lot of words. Apologies for our episode releasing on June 1st. But all of that said, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Say Report. Thank you so much for celebrating Brendan Fraser History Month with us. And without any further ado, William, please bring us home. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Sejin Sarwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.